My father grabbed the microphone, pointed it across a ballroom full of 200 people, aimed it straight at me, and said, "Do us both a favour. Sweetheart, leave before you embarrass me." The microphone hit the floor. The feedback squeal lasted 3 seconds, and then a woman stood up. The woman whose name was on the building my father had spent 30 years working inside, and she said something into that frozen silence that my father had never once said in 34 years of knowing me. She said my rank. This is that story. But to understand what happened in those 3 seconds, I need to take you back to a kitchen, 17 years earlier, where a teenage girl set a piece of paper on a counter like she was diffusing something, and a father looked at her like she had tracked mud across. Something clean. Stay with me, because the moment that room went cold is coming, and I want you in it when it does. My name is Renata Calloway. I am 34 years old, and I have spent the better part of my adult life doing work that does not appear on my LinkedIn, in buildings with no visible address, for a country that will never publicly acknowledge most of it. My family believed I had enlisted out of stubbornness, that I spent my 20s shuffling papers in a beige office somewhere, that I had, as my brother Garrett once put it to a cousin at Christmas, never really found my footing. My brother said this kindly. That was the worst part. He said it the way you describe a relative's bad luck, a girl who wandered. You know how she is. He had been narrating me to this family for 2 decades, and I had let him, because correcting him meant explaining a job I was not allowed to, explain to people who had already chosen the simpler version. So I let the story stand. It was cheaper than the fight. My father, Walter Calloway, is 62 years old, silver-haired, straight-backed, and capable of making a room full of strangers feel like they are the most important people he has ever met. He built propulsion systems for the government for 30 years. Not metaphorically, actual defense contracts. The kind of work that ends careers if you blink at the wrong moment. He shook the hands of senators. He remembered the names of waitstaff. He laughed at jokes precisely 1 beat before the punchline, which, if you have ever witnessed it, is its own category of social power. He was also, for most of my life, a man who looked at his youngest daughter the way you look at a sum that doesn't add up. At 17, I told him I wanted to go to West Point. I said it carefully, the way you set down something fragile. He did not yell. He set his coffee on the counter and looked at me like I had said something embarrassing out loud in a quiet room. People in uniform, he said, ran out of better options. Behind me, my grandmother made a sound in her throat. She had come for Sunday dinner in her good wool coat, and she had spent 22 years in the army, earning the kind of record my father kept in a drawer he never opened. She looked at me across the kitchen with an expression I would not undusted until much later. The expression of someone watching a door try to close on a person who was not going to let it. I did not know that night that my father had already made a phone call. I would not know for 17 years, and I would find out in the last place I expected, inside a Bible, in a dead woman's living room. 3 hours before the worst and best night of my life. The Meridian Club is the kind of venue that makes you aware of your shoes the moment you walk. In chandeliers the size of small cars, a string quartet playing something soft and expensive near the entrance. 200 guests in the kind of clothes that announce a number without saying it out loud. I had driven an hour in a borrowed dress, 3 inches too long, wrong at the shoulders, and shoes that had not been broken in. Under the neckline, on a worn chain, I carried my grandmother's compass, a brass thing scratched on one side, that she had pressed into my hand the night before I left for Fort Benning. She had held my face with both hands and said, "You will never be lost." And she meant it about more than navigation. She died 4 years ago. I touched the compass at the valet stand the way some people check for keys, just to confirm it was still there. There was no place card with my name at the front. I want to be precise about this. It is a small thing. A missing card. You cannot make a scene about seating assignments. You simply find your name written in the back of the program, between a retired engineer and an empty chair. And you understand that someone made a deliberate decision and that you were not worth the space at the front. My sister Lauren runs the family foundation and curates the family's reputation the way other people tend a garden. A soldier with no rank she could brag about did not fit the centerpiece, so I sat at table 11 and folded my hands and looked at the stage. People ask me why I came at all. The honest answer is that 3 days before this party was the anniversary of my grandmother's death, and somewhere underneath the rank and the clearances and the discipline I had spent a decade building like a wall, There was still a girl who believed that if she stood in the room long enough, her father might finally turn and see her. That girl had terrible judgment about attendance. Garrett found me before the salads arrived. My brother is 42, broad-shouldered, and has spent 20 years perfecting the art of being in the room when credit gets distributed. He is not unkind. He is just always slightly ahead of himself. "You look good," he said in the voice people use when they mean you look appropriate. Then, after exactly the right pause. "Still doing the military thing, still. That single word does a lot of work." I told him I was. He told me about a deal he'd almost closed. A number that had nearly landed. A quarter that had almost come through. He has always talked like a man trying to win an argument that no one else knows is happening. I drank water and let him. What I watched, and what he could not see me watching, was his eyes, moving constantly toward the head table. Toward the woman in the charcoal blazer who ran the company my father had spent his career building inside. Sylvia North, founder chairman. The kind of person who builds something that employs 4,000 people and still manages to seem like she is the least impressed person in any room she enters. Garrett wanted her to see him laughing beside our father. He clapped my shoulder, the affectionate pat you give something you are not quite sure of, and moved toward the stage. "I want to stop here and be honest with you for a moment. If you have ever been the family's footnote, the one they explain away at parties, the one whose name gets left off the program, you already know the arithmetic. You can be completely right and still be made to feel like the smallest person in the room. You can be calm and have it read as cold. You can be private and have it called arrogant. You can be doing the most important work of your life and have your brother tell a cousin at Christmas that you never really landed, and there is no winning that argument while it is happening. So you stop arguing, you let them be wrong. You keep your hands steady. But here is what I have learned. The truth does not need your help. It only needs a witness with enough weight to make it stick. That witness was already in this room. She just hadn't placed my face yet. What I have not told you is what happened before I drove to the Meridian Club. I had stopped at my father's house in Wexford to pick up a framed photograph my sister wanted for the gift table. Standard errand. Lauren includes me in family events by giving me tasks, which is its own kind of poetry. The house was the same and somehow smaller. I let myself in with the key under the third flower pot, the one that has been there since I was 9. The photograph was on the mantel, exactly where she said it would be, and beside it, my grandmother's Bible, the one she used to read at the kitchen table, while she waited for people who were always running late. My mother had kept it after the funeral. My mother has been gone for 9 years, and the Bible had simply stayed. The way certain things stay in houses, long after the people who loved them are gone. I picked it up without thinking, just to feel the weight of her in it. A folded sheet slid out from the back and landed on the carpet. My name on the outside. My grandmother's handwriting. I stood in that quiet house for a long moment, holding a letter I had never seen. Then I folded it once more, tucked it into my bag, and drove to the party without opening it. I told myself I would read it later. I told myself that while knowing it was a lie, she was at my table, 12 years old in a dress she clearly hated, arms crossed, watching me from the other side of the table, with the sharp expression of someone waiting for the evening to become interesting. My niece Maya, Garrett's daughter, she asked me, in a whisper, like it was classified information, whether I had ever broken a code. I told her that depended entirely on who was asking. She straightened her spine immediately, which made me like her enormously. We talked about her school project on cryptography. She had gone deep. Enigma, lattice-based encryption. Things that 12-year-olds do not typically chase without someone pushing them. I let her explain all of it without interruption. Behind the bar, an older man, short hair, army ring on his right hand, refilled my water without being asked and gave me a single nod. The kind that crosses every branch and every generation. I see you. At the table behind me, 2 guests were whispering about the spring. A government program, a close call. Nobody at the party knew exactly what had stopped it, or who. I kept my eyes on Maya's sketch of a cipher wheel, and did not change my face. The compass under the borrowed dress lay warm against my chest. At 8:15, before the toast, I slipped out to the coat-room hallway and opened my grandmother's letter. She had written it 2 years before she died, and tucked it into the Bible because, she wrote, she needed me to find it when I was ready, and she trusted grief to know the timing better than she did. My darling, she wrote, There is something your father did that I have carried for 17 years and will not take to my grave. When you were 16, your school nominated you for a regional Girotti Leadership Award, the kind that becomes your first official record. Your father called the district coordinator. He told them quietly that you were troubled, that it was a family matter. The recognition went to another student. I found out because the coordinator told me at church, thinking I already knew. I drove to your father's house that same afternoon, and I told him that if he ever interfered with your path again, I would tell every person at his dinner table exactly what he had done. He believed me, because I meant it, and after that day he never did. But you deserved to know the truth. The door was always yours. He tried to close it. You walked through it anyway. The compass points true, baby. It always has. Follow it. I closed my hand around the brass case through the fabric of the dress. I had spent 17 years believing I had simply not been good enough the first time. That the gap between my father's faith in me and where I had arrived was something I had earned by being insufficient. None of it was true. I had never been insufficient. I had been blocked. And I had broken through it without ever knowing I was breaking through anything. Just a girl who kept going because no one had told her the door was supposed to be locked. I folded the letter, put it back in my bag, walked to my seat. And I waited for my father to say the thing he had practiced. Here is what people get wrong about public humiliation. They imagine it arrives like a single blow. It doesn't. It is a choreography. It is the way a room's temperature changes before anything is said. The way 200 people shift in their seats. The way the powerful man at the microphone tilts his chin just slightly toward the back table. And every eye in the room follows the angle. And suddenly the woman they had mostly ignored for 2 hours is the center of something she did not ask to be the center of. My father is gifted at this. I want to give him that. He thanked the company. He thanked Sylvia North with a bow that managed to look both humble and proprietary. A man honouring the queen of a country he half believed he had built himself. He thanked Garrett, the future of the division, the steady hand, 30 more years of building ahead of him. He thanked Lauren for the foundation, the gala, the gift table with his own framed photograph on it. The photograph I had driven 40 minutes to collect from his mantel that afternoon. He did not know that. The universe knew it. I let the universe have its moment. Then his eyes moved to the back of the room, to table 11, and they stopped. And he smiled the smile I have known my entire life, the one that is warm at the surface and has no flaw beneath it. I'm a lucky man, my father said, because I have exceptional children. He paused. The room leaned forward. And then there's Renata. A ripple moved through the ballroom. That uncertain sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a gasp. 200 people waiting to find out if what they just heard was a joke. He gave them the permission to decide it was. He spread his hands. My youngest. She enlisted. She's been out there doing whatever it is. He laughed. Comfortable, proprietary. Some of us build companies. Some of us wander. A few people laughed. Not many. But a few is all you need to turn a cruelty into a moment. And then my father put the warmth down completely, and said the part that was not a joke at all. Sweetheart, he said, and the word was a weapon wrapped in silk. I think we'd all be more comfortable if you saved us both the embarrassment. And stepped out. The room went cold. I want to be precise about what that felt like. You can outgrow your fear of a sentence and it still finds you. 34 years of being told you are too small, you don't fit, you are the thing the family explains away. The body remembers all of it. My hands were perfectly still. The rest of me was 17 years old in a kitchen, with a piece of paper on a counter. But I am not 17. I am a major in the United States Army, and I have held my composure in rooms where losing it was measured in lives. A ballroom full of strangers was not going to be the thing that broke a discipline that harder things could not. So I did not flinch. I did not fire back. I set my napkin on the table, folded once, and I stood up. I put my coat over my arm. I was going to leave with my spine straight, because that was the right door, and I had decided on it, and I keep the decisions I make to myself. I had made it 1.5 steps. My hand was on the strap of my bag, and into the absolute silence of that ballroom. From the direction of the head table, from the woman who answered to no one in that building, came a single word. Not loud, not sharp, just certain. The way a door sounds when it locks. Wait. Sylvia North was on her feet. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. When the founder of a company stands up during the guest of honour's toast, every head in the room turns. And every head turned. My father turned too. The smile still half assembled on his face. the index card still in his hand. A man who did not yet understand that the floor had just shifted under him. Sylvia was not looking at him. She was looking at me, across the entire length of that ballroom, with the focused stillness of someone matching a face to a file. "I have been trying to place you all evening," she said. She took 2 steps away from the head table. The room did not breathe. "Step into the light a moment." I did. I did not yet know why. The chandelier caught me, and I watched Sylvia North's face do something I had only ever seen in closed briefings. The expression of a person watching 2 separate pieces of information connect into a single, complete picture. "I know exactly who you are," she said quietly, then louder, clear enough to reach the microphone and the stage and the senator and every person who had just watched my father call me a wanderer. "You're Commander Calloway, Thornfield Protocol, Spring Operation." The room did not gasp. It did something quieter and far worse for the man at the microphone. It froze. 200 people held perfectly still in the exact instant of understanding that the woman at the back table, the embarrassment, the whatever it is, the daughter being asked to leave before she caused a scene, had just been addressed by rank, by operation name, by the chairman of the company her father had spent his entire career trying to impress. My father's hand opened. The microphone hit the floor. The feedback squeal lasted 3 seconds. Sylvia North did not enjoy those 3 seconds. That was the thing about her. She was not performing. She was simply doing what the moment required. The way people do when they have been powerful long enough that power no longer needs to announce itself. She turned to face the room. "In the spring of this year," she said, "this company was 9 minutes from losing a classified federal program that represents 30% of our operating revenue. The kind of loss that does not generate a press release. The kind that ends a company, 4,000 jobs, this building, the pension you are all here tonight to celebrate." She let it land. The work that stopped it was sealed by order. The names came to 6 of us later. In a closed briefing, a photograph, a service record. She looked at me steadily. "I have spent all evening trying to remember where I had seen that face." She said it without drama, without theatre, without a single glance toward the stage. "The people in this room still have jobs because of what that team did, because of who led it." She turned back to me. "That was you. It was not a question." I held her eyes. "That was my team, ma'am. I had the privilege of leading them. And the truth did the rest. The way truth always does when the right person is finally in the room to receive it." I watched 200 people quietly rewrite the entire evening. The wanderer was the commander who had saved the company. The embarrassment was the reason. The man at the microphone still had a pension to retire on. The whatever it is was the sealed, classified work that the guests at the next table had been whispering about all night without knowing who had done it. My brother went the colour of the tablecloth. He had spent 20 years narrating me small. He had built his entire worth in this family on the premise that I was the lesser version, the one who never landed. And the woman he had been trying to impress all night, the woman he had brought a drink she had not asked for, the woman whose name he had dropped on a contract she had personally cancelled, had just used my rank in front of 400 eyes. I watched the math of his life recalculate behind his face. My father stood at the edge of the stage, and for the first time in 34 years, I watched Walter Calloway be unable to find the next thing to say. He found it eventually. They always do. He reached for the room the way a drowning man reaches for anything floating. "Folks, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Of course I'm proud of her. She gets her fight from me. I always pushed her to be tough." He was claiming me, in real time. Standing in the light I had earned and calling it his workmanship. Trying to fold my rank into his own legacy. To be the man who forged the very thing he had spent 30 years trying to prevent. I watched him do it, and I felt something I had not expected. Not anger, not triumph, pity, not the forgiving kind, the recognizing kind. The kind that looks at a man scrambling to reattach himself to a story he spent a lifetime trying to erase, and simply sees what it costs him to be. Exactly who he is. I had the letter in my bag, 3 sentences of my grandmother's handwriting that would have ended his retirement in front of everyone he had invited to watch him win. The room would have devoured it. I thought about the compass against my chest. The compass points true. Baby, I did not reach for the letter. I looked at my father instead. Dad, just that word. And the room went still again, because it was the quietest thing spoken all night, and somehow the heaviest. "You spent 30 years telling this family that people who wore a uniform ran out of better choices. I want you to know something. I had choices. I chose this one, at 17, in your kitchen, while you stood in the next room deciding what I was worth. I chose it. And I have chosen it every single day since, in rooms you will never have the clearance to hear about. I let that settle. You tried to take it from me once. I know that now, and I made it anyway. His face told the room what I had not spelled out. That was enough. That was more than enough. I didn't come here to be reclaimed, I said. I came to close a door. I'm glad I got to do it with the lights on. I picked up my bag. My mother's letter still folded inside it, unread to everyone in that room. Mine. My father said my name from the stage. Softer now, almost a question, a man grabbing for a railing that was no longer there. I did not turn around. I had spent 34 years turning around for that voice. I was done counting the steps back. Maya had slipped free of her mother and was waiting at the edge of the room. 12 years old, fierce, eyes bright. She grabbed my hand. Are you actually a commander? I knelt down to her level, the way my grandmother used to kneel down to mine. Really, I said. And you are genuinely good at cryptography. Finish that project. Get the grade, and then come find me in about 10 years. She nodded like I had issued her an order. I suppose I had. I stood up, across the room. Sylvia North caught my eye and gave me one short nod. Peer to peer. I returned it. The senator shook my hand on my way past his table. Brief. The way men in his position acknowledge something they cannot put on the record. The door to the Meridian Club was heavy and cold. It opened onto a parking lot full of ordinary cars, and the night air outside was clean and indifferent and completely free of all of them. I found my car. I put my grandmother's letter on the passenger seat where I could see it. And I drove north toward my own life, the one no one in that room had ever once thought to ask about. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I did not feel like I was leaving something. I felt like I was finally completely arriving somewhere. 3 weeks later my father sent a text, 4 sentences, no apology in any of them. The last one said, I didn't know about the Thornfield thing, which was true, and which was the whole problem. Because I had been the Thornfield thing for 34 years, and he had never once asked. I wrote back one line. The door is open if you ever want to know your daughter, not the version you invented, the real one. He has not answered yet, he may never. I made my peace with that somewhere around the state line on the drive home, and the peace is held. You do not get to choose whether your father sees you. You only get to choose how long you stand in the dark, waiting for him to turn on the light. My grandmother's grave is in the veterans section on the east side of town, flat stone, flush with the grass, her name, her years, her rank. I go every year. I sat in the grass and told her everything, the dropped microphone, the chairman, the word commander landing in a frozen room. I told her I did not read the letter out loud, that I let the wrong people stay wrong the way she had always taught me to. She would have approved of that. I took the compass off my neck and held it in the sun for a while. Watched the needle do what it has always done, calm, quiet, and completely certain about which direction is true. Then I put it back on. It is mine to carry a while longer. Here is the only wisdom I have, and it came from her, so it is worth more than anything I could have arrived at. On my own. The people who love you will find you no matter how quietly you live. The people who don't, no amount of proof will ever be enough. Stop spending your life trying to convince the wrong ones. Let your work speak. Let the right people find you. And trust that the compass you have been carrying, the thing that has always known who you are, even in the years when you forgot, has been pointing true the whole time. That is my story. One microphone, one frozen room, and a father who spent 34 years never learning the rank of his own daughter. If someone in your life has already decided who you are without ever once asking, you do not owe them the proof. Let them be wrong, and live fully inside the life they said you couldn't have.